Growing up, I've never been an Xbox kid. A good couple of years into my parents' divorce, my family at the time needed to move back to Texas, staying with family friends until we can get a place situated. My uncle was pretty good about keeping up to date with the newest consoles coming out at the time. Whatever he didn't play anymore ended up going to my cousin. And I've never had a really close relationship with any of my extended family members until this point. But it was during this weird shift in all of our lives that me, my brother, and my cousin all bonded over one game together. A little game we found lying around on Xbox Live Arcade. And because of where I placed it in my memories, it's weirdly pretty important to me. And so today, I'd like to unearth a time capsule for a tiny but meaningful part of my life. And through unearthing this time capsule, we're going to bear witness to a story that you've never seen before. And as a consolation, the game's pretty cool too. So, get a snack, get a drink, put this on in the background, do whatever it is you do, and join me again for yet another trip down memory lane. Dungeon Defenders is like stupidly amazingly good, and I've decided to hold y'all hostage until you both buy the game and watch this video till completion. Sorry, but you don't get a choice. You entered a legally binding contract by watching that black screen before this video properly started. If you think I'm lying, you can go back and check. I put it there. I really did. Dungeon Defenders was developed by Trendy Entertainment, with publishing help from Reverb Triple XP, a publisher name I've never heard before and had a weirdly hard time searching for. But understand first and foremost that Dungeon Defenders has aged gracefully. On the one hand, it released in December 15th, 2010, so the game is over 15 years old by this point, which is insane. And you'll come to understand that its lifespan gets more insane as we go on here, but I think this game is cool and I think it's worth giving a shot. What you're looking at here is a 3D tower defense with some RPG mechanics thrown in there. You place walls to block dudes, you place towers to shoot dudes. When the round actually starts, you can pick up currency to summon more towers, as well as randomly generated loot to increase the capabilities of your character and your towers, and a semi-unique feature in this game where you can actually fight the enemies on your own. The characters you build into have weapons and such, and obviously that means they can attack the enemies themselves. And it's all just so cool, I love it, it's so neat, oh my god. Alright, okay, let's calm down, hold on. We're getting ahead of ourselves. In order to do this video right, in order to do this game right, we need to start at the beginning.
Etheria was once a land of living legends.
The story here isn't like all that important, so I'm just gonna summarize it as quick as I can. Basically, 4 generic RPG heroes went out and fought some evil dudes, sealed the evil away, and now they're off doing their own little thing, just adventuring all over the place. The children of these heroes are left bored at the castle. They start messing around and oh no, they accidentally unleash all of the evil inside of the castle. Because all of the cool decorated heroes are too busy to come back right now, it's up to these little kids to just sort of defend the whole castle by themselves. So that's why, if you were wondering why all the playable characters are so small, it's because you're literally playing as children. There's a sort of neat continuity thing going on with this later on, but I'll bring that up later. Before we actually get the ability to play the game, we need to select our hero. Just to sort of throw this out there, like I said before, this game is pretty old, and if you're picking your character for the first time here, the game is going to show its age pretty immediately. So before we talk about any of that, let's just take a second to examine the announcer for all of these different heroes, and see if you notice anything weird.
Brave knight in training, the squire upholds the honor and nobility of his kingdom.
Okay, good start. That sounds pretty normal, nothing wrong there.
Once a peaceful and passive student, the monk has been called from his...
A sly trickster born in a whimsical realm of chaos.
That's a different voice actor, okay?
Proud Etherian warrior of noble descent, the Count...
Why are you talking through a tin can? I will wholeheartedly admit that this initial first impression makes the game seem really shoddy, but I promise this is the only weird thing that happens. Well, the only other weird thing. The gun witch doesn't even get an announcer, there's just nothing for her, it's completely silent. Like I said, bad first impression. That's not even bringing up the fact that there's so many classes to pick from. Like, the 4 that just come with the vanilla game are plenty enough, so which one do you pick? This whole thing can definitely come off as really weird and overwhelming, so let me just set the record straight real quick. The original 4 classes that you start the game with, being Squire, Apprentice, Monk, and Huntress, are all perfectly fine and serviceable. The other characters you can purchase as DLC, and while they might have their own fun, I never played any of them growing up. As a result, I know nothing about them, so I couldn't give you any tips on them. And ultimately, if you're just jumping into a new video game, you probably shouldn't be spending extra money on it, just, you know, the asking price. I think that's reasonable. If you are playing completely by yourself, my highest recommendations have to go to either Apprentice or Squire. They have good offensive and defensive options, and again, if you're only playing solo, I think they're the best picks here. If you're playing with any number of your friends, then go ahead and pick whatever sounds interesting. We'll start breaking down the characters sort of as they come up, but for now, let's enter into the first level. Just for the record, I don't plan on talking about every stage in this game, just some of the highlights. But we do have to start somewhere, so may as well start with the first level. Good old Deeper Well. After thinking about it some, part of me wants to say that this is maybe a bad introduction into the game, just in a couple of weird ways. It's a slow and simple start, which definitely works as an introductory stage sort of feeling, right? But for those of you who have played this game, just consider how little defense units you're given. You don't really have very many options to do much of anything in this stage. And again, I get that, it's an introductory level. And I mean, of course, if you've never played this game before, it's definitely a good stage to sort of ease into, but just, I don't know. In some ways, for me, it sort of doubles down on the whole bad first impression thing in some ways. Moving on swiftly from that, though, let's lay down some basic rules for Dungeon Defenders, how you should be playing the game. Even though your character does have the ability to fight by themselves, remember that Dungeon Defenders is a tower defense game first. As a result, whenever it comes to building your character, you should probably be focusing on your towers. There are exceptions to this rule, but again, if you're just starting the game, focus on things like tower damage and tower health, just as a start. Speaking of stats and characters, let's go ahead and break down the Apprentice. The Apprentice is easily the best starting character to play in Dungeon Defenders. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a skill ceiling here. In my mind, the Apprentice is sort of a jack-of-all-trades that leans more towards attack than anything else. His first tower is a pretty bog-standard magic missile tower. Single target damage at a short range, and it gets a job done. This is surprisingly significant to note, if only because, well, something is better than nothing in this game. If you cast your eyes to the upper right portion of the screen, you can see this little number called defense units. Not only do you have to worry about mana to physically place your towers, and different towers have a different mana cost, but different towers also have a defense unit cost. This is how many towers you can place in one map. Defense units are global across your entire team, and the really cool thing about the Apprentice is that the first 2 starting towers that he has are really cheap. If you have no idea what to place down in a lane, or if you just want something to be there for extra covering fire or something, that's what the Magic Missile Tower is for. At level 3, you also get a basic barricade. And this is okay too, actually. Once again, it's better than nothing. Do note you probably shouldn't be spending all that much tower health in the Apprentice, it's not exactly his cup of tea. But as long as the lane doesn't have all that much traffic, you can use this tiny little barricade to just protect your towers for longer. In case you haven't been looking at the screen, the magic barricade only costs 1 defense unit. That's the cheapest tower in the game. Like, yeah, I mean, it's not a crazy useful defense unit or whatever, and depending on the situation, it's probably only as good as a moral support tower. But again, something is better than nothing. You have to divvy up your attention in this game. The Apprentice is a ranged spellcaster sort of fighter, so you don't have to be in enemies' faces in order to attack them, and that's useful in and of itself. But your attention is still being divided. You have to run around and upgrade your towers, you have to repair them, you have to place new ones, and sometimes that happens during a combat phase. Don't worry if these 2 towers aren't exactly wowing you, they're not supposed to. Not long after that, you get a fireball tower that's capable of an AoE explosion at point of impact, which is amazing. a lightning tower that can hit in a 360-degree radius around it, and the lightning chains to other enemies. And the final tower is a sniper tower. It takes a long time to charge up before it loses a shot, but it does a ton of damage. And its starting range without building into it at all is pretty good. I think it might have the longest vanilla range out of any tower in the game, actually. To not keep this section too long, I'm also just going to mention that every hero has access to their own abilities that they can use in combat as well. And I just need to mention that the Apprentice's Mana Bomb skill does a ridiculously high amount of damage.
Holy
Oh my
shit!
god! There's no way! That is unreal! Wrapping up Apprentice here, like I said, perfectly good starting character. He's also a character with enough depth and forethought involved already that he scales really well in late game too. It's cool because no character gets overshadowed by anybody else. You can make any character work in this game without much of any resistance at all. And a good character with a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling is always appreciated, regardless of what game you're talking about. A good hub world in a video game can feel like a home away from home, or maybe like a summer vacation house or something. I could make a video all about hub worlds if I really wanted to. Actually, hold on, I need to write that down. There are many video game hub worlds that I consider to be a second home for me, and Dungeon Defenders is definitely one of them. If you're wondering why it's so red and full of hearts everywhere, it's because it's February at the time of writing, and sorry I couldn't do a proper vanilla experience of the tower. Trust me, I tried. Setting my clock back and having it to where I'm in offline mode didn't do anything, seemingly. I don't know why, but that's where we're at. Best I can do without stealing somebody else's footage is pulling up some wiki images of the tavern. Again, sorry for that. The tavern is where you go after you complete any level. You can talk to the barkeep to access several pieces of new equipment by way of a shop. Much like with anything having to do with loot in this game, it's completely random, and the prices can get kind of ridiculous, but just buy what seems good and buy what you can afford, obviously. There's several places where you can fight training dummies too if you just want to test the capabilities of your character or your towers. And I mean, other than that, it's not like a whole lot else is going on here. There's a player shop system, and you can obviously trade your equipment with other players that are in the same lobby as you. But I do want you to keep the tavern in the back of your mind. We'll revisit the tavern here at the end of the video for a pretty important reason. Apparently, some update a time ago added a second floor. I had no idea. Back in my day, we only had the original ground floor to explore, and it was a whole lot of nothing. And that's a weird feeling to come across in a game that you're normally so familiar with. Just suddenly a new area that you can walk around in. When did this happen? I know I could just Google it, but when and why? As another cool thing I can sort of throw in here, there's actually a free anniversary DLC you can download for the game that makes the entire tavern a playable map. You can even go outside of it, which is cool. But I mean, other than that, that's all I got for the tavern. Just, I don't know, so many memories here. I wish I could express them all, but I mean, if you know, you know. I'm gonna opt to save a little bit of time here and talk about two defenders at once in this section. We have a couple of reasons for that. Monk and Huntress both place towers that don't necessarily act as walls or turrets. This is why, if you decide to play them solo, you might have a harder time as compared to Apprentice or Squire. TLDR, their defenses are a little bit unorthodox, and it's maybe a little bit more than you're willing to learn at this moment. And because I don't know which one to start with, we're gonna do a coin flip. Hey, do you have a coin?
Somewhere.
I don't know what this bit is, but I have to set my mic down. Tails, we're gonna do Huntress. The Huntress is your standard squishy, ranged, damage-based character. Her abilities consist of a piercing shot, which does a bunch of damage and obviously goes through multiple enemies at once, and an invisibility power that makes it to where she just doesn't get seen by enemies. They work pretty well and they're pretty useful. Her towers, though, are pretty interesting. Instead of setting a typical tower or a wall like I said before, the Huntress instead places traps. These are more or less consumable towers. Her starting trap, for instance, is a proximity mine trap. All of her traps range anywhere from 3 to 4 defense units, so they're on the cheaper side to place, and that's because you're going to be placing them a lot. What you might notice is that the traps have a very tiny health bar. And if you've never placed a trap before, it might seem like a pretty big issue. But in truth, the reason for the low health is because enemies don't attack them. They simply get set off, so instead of having an HP bar, it's a number of times the traps can rearm itself. This means the traps have the unique ability of being set on the path of where the enemies are going. And obviously it does things like debuff them or deal damage to them, and all that good stuff. The Huntress becomes really useful in the team dynamic here because you can sort of pre-game the enemies before they get to your defenses. You don't have to worry about tower health so much if the enemies are just going to be around for less time now. And yeah, that's certainly valuable. Jumping unceremoniously over to Monk for a second, his towers are pretty similar in a weird way. Once again, instead of placing towers, the Monk places auras. Auras are similarly unable to be detected by enemies. But instead of dealing any innate damage to the enemies themselves, there's only one aura that does that anyway, the Monk focuses more on debuffing. Your starting tower is an ensnare aura, and this makes it to where enemies move a lot slower. There's a wildly high amount of applications for something like that, obviously, but there's also an aura that makes the enemies enraged and start attacking each other. There's a small handful of enemies this doesn't work on, but largely speaking, why spend any of your resources on the enemies if they can just be made to fight themselves? The Monk also has 2 buffing abilities associated with him, one of which being a hero boost that makes it to where you have an AoE, radial sort of buff field. Regens everyone's HP, makes them move faster, makes them attack faster, stuff like that. And then the other one is a defense boost. Regenerates the defense's health, and increases their overall effectiveness with attack speed and damage and all the other good stuff too. It's basically a free tower upgrade, and I don't think I need to spell out how that's valuable. The Monk is also the only character that has a melee weapon and a ranged weapon, and the benefits of that are pretty self-explanatory. At least they should be, anyway. But yeah, like I was saying, Monk and Huntress are both plenty good classes as they are. It's just because they don't have any walls or traditional towers, it makes them kind of hard to be a pick-up-and-play sort of character. But their unique capabilities definitely add a lot to a team. And again, if you're playing with friends, why not throw them in? They're certainly good classes, but they're not my favorite. And we're just gonna save that conversation for later. So I've obviously been talking for a good long while here. And because you're contractually obligated to watch this video, you might be asking the question, well, is this all there is? Is it only dungeon defending? Is all there is just tower defense stuff? Well, yes and no. Dungeon Defenders is a game that takes the concept of a tower defense and runs with it, innovating on the genre as often as possible. You have the regular campaign stuff where you just have to survive a number of waves of enemies coming at you. You've seen all that before, nothing new there. You also have a survival mode where you have to go to 20 or 30 waves of just being in the same mission, enemies getting harder, and this works too. But there's plenty else to look forward to as well. There's obviously seasonal events that have changes to the map or completely unique maps that you can play on, as well as just a bunch of challenges that have you do like a boss rush mode or the core you're trying to defend warps around the map or something. The point is, there's a lot and they're all welcome inclusions. Maybe my dialogue here isn't necessarily winning you over to this game, and if that's the case, I'm really not sure why you're watching this far in, but I mean, thanks anyway. Oh right, legal obligation, that was the thing. But no, getting back on track here, understand that this game has a wildly addictive gameplay loop. I don't even know if I can really describe it properly. It's really easy to just lose hours at a time in the day, going through these missions, playing through these levels, and just not stopping. That's possibly a pretty biased take, obviously depending on how much you like tower defenses. Well, your mileage is going to vary, but I've always been a person that never really liked tower defenses all that much, and this game continues to hook me. After getting the game for all of my friends, we all just want to jump back into the game and play more levels. And all of them have very little exposure with tower defenses sort of in general. It's a game genre that used to just be a time waster. The proto-clicker game, I guess, if you want to think of it like that. And I don't know, man, it's just kind of magical. I love this game. I think it's really good. I guess we can count this part of the video as sort of an intermission, but we need to get back into it, so let me go ahead and explain the Last Defender. Not only is he my favorite, but he's also the character I have mained throughout my entire time of playing Dungeon Defenders, so I've got a lot to say. Understand that whenever I tell you Squire is the best hero in Dungeon Defenders, that is personal conjecture and an opinion. But it's one that I believe, and I'm not really known for lying or being dishonest with myself, so I'm going to talk as if Squire is the best hero in Dungeon Defenders because I think he is. Alright, here we go. Squire is a high health melee defender. His two abilities are Circular Slice, which attacks in an AoE, knocks enemies back and can send them off cliffs, and Blood Rage, which makes it to where it increases his speed and his damage drastically. His abilities are fine and I don't really have any problems with them, but they're not the main part of his kit. To keep a long story short, his towers are ridiculously good. The Squire is primarily known for having 3 barriers. You would think this is a redundancy issue with his kit. It's not. Spike Wall is a cheap blockade you can put up in front of enemies, and whenever they attack it, they take damage back. The damage stacks with tower damage and not any other stat, which means if you hardcore focus into tower damage, it can end up basically one-shotting enemies more or less. Bouncer blockades are good for shoving enemies back. They have a little bit less health than the spike blockade, and once again, because it's a knockback thing, you can send them into spike walls or other environmental hazards. The Slice and Dice blockade is a blender, and I don't need to tell you why that's cool. Its DPS ramps up the longer it stays going, and it reaches its cap speed relatively quickly. But it's not just walls for this guy, oh no. Your third unlocked tower is the Harpoon turret. At a glance, this tower just looks like another regular old standard projectile throwing tower. But its main gimmick is the ability to pierce enemies, and there is no cap for how many enemies it can pierce. It just goes as far as the projectile will let it. There is no situation where the Harpoon turret is bad whatsoever. And if you can find a nice hallway to just cleave through enemies, then you basically have the Huntress's pierce ability as a tower. And the final tower is by far my favorite turret in the entire game. This is the Bowling Ball Tower. It fires giant steel cannonballs that roll around on the ground. They bounce off of walls, they bounce off of enemies, and they stick around on the field for a ridiculously long time. I don't know if there's a name for this strategy or this technique or whatever you want to call it, but anytime I see like a canyon or a divot in the map somewhere, I've taken to calling these little places ball pits. If you get enough of these towers located into one area, it makes the entire surrounding field intraversable for the enemies. It is silly, it is ridiculous, it is exactly my type of thing. And if I'm gonna be honest, I call myself a Squire main, but really I'm a bowling ball main. The applications for the bowling ball tower are pretty few and far between, but understand, anytime I see even a slight divot in the map, I'm probably going to put a bowling ball turret there. I just have to, it's so fun. And dude, if it works, it is all you need to defend an area. The well of dopamine from this thing runs deep, and I have yet to hit the bottom in all of my years playing this game. And you know what? That's a sentence that applies widely to the entire hero too, actually. He's just got everything, and he benefits off of every stat that you can think of. Extra turret range, the harpoons fly further. Extra damage, everything hurts more. Extra health, you're the tank, that should be your job. Extra defense rate, yes, please, let my bowling balls fly further, fly harder, fly faster. It's just, ooh, it's so cool, dude. Everything about this hero is perfect. And no, don't worry, he can wear pants. I hope you can just, like, understand now why I said you should start with either Apprentice or Squire. I have a lot of positives to say for this character, but that's because he's the one that I played the most. I'm sure with enough practice and character building, you can make any character just about as overpowered. And I mean, I'm obviously biased here, I really like this character, I really like this game, but that's why I just want y'all to play it. I think it's neat, it's really cool, and I just wish it didn't have to end. What you're currently witnessing is a trailer for Dungeon Defenders Awakened, a remake for the original game that came out during 2020. I've tried to like this game, ever since I got it 2 or 3 years ago. Dungeon Defenders Awakened is an underbaked mess of a game. It's been in early access for 5 years, and the original developers that made the first game, remember that's Trendy Entertainment, renamed themselves to Chromatic Games. It was during this rebrand that Trendy Entertainment broke away from their publishers, finally able to make the thing that they've been wanting to make, with complete creative freedom. All the original devs are still there, they're still working on Dungeon Defenders, it's just, now it's in a lot more of a sorry state. And what makes this worse is that this isn't the first time this happened. Dungeon Defenders Going Rogue only came out a couple years ago, and remember, Awakened is still trying to be developed. At least, supposedly. Dating even further back than this, there's Dungeon Defenders 2. And it has its fans, people do like it. Purely from an aesthetic standpoint, all of your original characters are grown up now, going on adventures like their parents, and that's kinda cool. But there's a sentiment being echoed all throughout this entire series by its fans. Anytime they play anything other than the original, they always say, it's just not the same. It's a sad state to be in. Chromatic Games has only ever made one franchise, and the only good game they made was the original. That's it. They caught lightning in a bottle, and that's it. Everything else is just sort of a weak whimper compared to how well the original game did. And I can't for the life of me understand how only one game could be truly successful. How does a company not just violently explode from failure after failure? There's a question to be asked about general dev competency here, and I don't know if I have all the knowledge to be able to answer it for you, but even still, this is ridiculous, frankly. And as we stand in the current day, that's kind of it for Dungeon Defenders. One particularly good start that has people endeared to the entire franchise, and then just broken trust over and over and over again. So I guess that's it. Another sad ending to something that could have been so good. Or at least, that's what I would say. But let me show you the release date of the Gunwitch character for the original Dungeon Defenders, and tell me if you see anything wrong with this too. I told y'all this story got weird, and I hope you can see now that it wasn't just hyperbole. Take this next bit of information with a little bit of a grain of salt. But as far as I understand it, Chromatic Games has been trying to make more games in the Dungeon Defenders series time and time again. But simply due to the overwhelming popularity of the first game, people keep going back to it. These longtime fans of the series keep getting disappointed with the new games coming out, they just go back to what works, and Chromatic Games sees that and goes, alright, well we're just gonna push out more content for the very first game that we made. I have never in my life heard of a dev team ever do something like this. They understand that they caught lightning in a bottle, and instead of ditching it for whatever reason, they just keep building it up. Again, at the time of writing, the Gunwitch DLC came out 2 months ago. And I'm gonna bear to repeat myself, this game has been out for 15 years. This game isn't dying, it's not a corpse, it's not a dead game with a story to tell. This thing is a village chieftain with war stories and life experience. It's getting to the point now where if this game gets any older, I'm afraid it's going to start asking for the same rights as human beings. I'm just so glad that we don't have to end on a sad note. We don't have any sad endings because the ending hasn't been told yet. With at least one game in this series, we still have stories we can tell, memories we can experience, with a whole host of new friends to make. If you decide to pick up Dungeon Defenders for yourself, you can get the game for dirt cheap on Steam. It goes on sale all the time, and whenever I got it, I ended up getting a 4-pack for $20. That is insane for the amount of game you get in one video game. If you end up liking it enough, then why not get a DLC or two? For every one character DLC we get, we also obtain new maps and new challenges and such. This game has stayed alive for this long because the people who played it care. And you know what? I'm willing to bet the devs care too. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up now because this video has been far too long already. But for the very end, I want to show you what happens whenever you beat the game, unlock the secret room in the tavern, go in there, and find a secret QR code. It gives you a little phone number, a message from the developers, and I think it's a good note to end on. As always, if you enjoyed the video, then go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. I have new videos coming out every Friday, and if you decide to join the Patreon for $1 a month, you get your name read out loud at the end of these videos, as well as exclusive sneak peeks for future videos that I post on the Discord channel. Whether you're a returning fan, or a new fan to this series, or just this one game, I guess, odds are I'm going to be playing this game for years to come, so if you want to join the Discord and hang out and play a couple levels together, that would make my day. That's going to be it from me, though. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day, everybody.
Congrats, you found the Dungeon Defender secret room hotline. Please leave a message with your email address, gamer tag, and what console or PC service that you use to play Dungeon Defenders, and make it back to you within a reasonable amount of time with a nice gift or something special. Happy gaming.